This is a 2005 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It has a problem with intermittently not starting. I'm going to take a general look around, see if there's any obvious problems with the starter not working. There's a pretty good bit of corrosion in the negative terminal, but I guess the lights are all working on it. And the starter is just not engaging at all with the ignition switch. I think there was a starter put on this 1.5 years ago. Well, nothing obvious happening. Hook the scan tool up, I guess. There was only a couple airbag codes stored for the passenger seatbelt pre-tensioner circuit open, which I think the plug-in's got a problem on the bottom of it, and some implausible data from the module code. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the starter problem. And they're kind of in a rush to get this back, so I guess I'll clean this terminal up. It looks like something bad happened to it there. And go ahead and change the starter on it like they asked me to. Some of the circuits involved in the starter circuit is this one. And of course the battery cable, the ignition switch, the park neutral safety switch, and connector 3, pin 38, dark green and orange, is the relay control that pretty much runs through the ground part of the relay. Then the ignition switch sends the juice to it to close the contacts. I'm going to go down and take the starter off, have a look at the grounding points on the starter. If you really want to check how good this terminal is hooking up for corroded, put a voltmeter in the center post here and on this ground cable and turn it over and see what kind of differences in voltage you're seeing. Really shouldn't see that much. If you're getting a full volt difference, it's got a problem probably. I'm going to go ahead and clean this one and probably have to grind that and build it off of that terminal to even get that loose. I'm going to run this up on a ramp. Hopefully it's not too hot to work on. And come up and disconnect this negative battery terminal. Let's see if I can get that melted lead off of there. A little grungy. There's the jewel. Mercedes transmission. It looks like it's plugged in. I'm going to take this skid plate off. Take two bolts out in the back and loosen two in the front. They're 13 millimeters. Get that out of the way. Well, the skid plate's off now. Got a little better look at the starter. Looks like it could be a little grungy. There may be some corrosion issues between that dark housing and the lighter housing. I'm going to take the dry shaft bolts out. I'm going to put a mark on the dry shaft too to match it back up to where it belongs. I went ahead and took the 13 millimeter nut off of this battery cable and unplugged this start wire, the yellow one. You have to push down on this tab to get it to release. Like I say, you can do it now by the starter stationary or take it down and do it. As long as you don't break it off the solenoid. I'm going to go ahead and match mark the dry shaft. Sometimes it's required and sometimes it's just a matter of semantics. Mark the flange and the yoke so they can go back together the same way. This has four 15 millimeter bolts holding the front dry shaft yoke to the front rear end flange. I'm going to remove those four bolts to let the dry shaft get loose from it. And then there's two starter bolts, that's 15. Okay, all I need to do is take the two starter bolts out of it. I got the front dry shaft dislodged off the front flange. Zap these two starter bolts out. Watch your oxygen sensor so you don't break it off if you're using an impact. And they're both loosened up. I'll have to support the starter to finish taking the top one out. I had to stick both arms up in there, one to hold the starter right here on top of this Y pipe and between the dry shaft. One hand held the starter up and the other one turned the last bolt out. Like that. thing don't weigh very much. Be a good enough reason for it to fail, I guess. Maybe some working's been going on this starter spade or not. Oh well, they're in a hurry, so I'll just put a new one on it. Check that spade terminal end out. It is a little green and fuzzy. This is a brand new aftermarket starter. Ready to go back in. I'm going to put some grease on this terminal spade. See if I can help that from corroding up. Some terminal grease or dielectric grease. After interviewing customer further, they said they did hear a clicking going on out here under the hood. That was pretty loud. It wasn't quiet like a relay. It's more than likely the solenoid had a fault. It's not beyond saying that this case couldn't have been corroded up. Not making a good ground. I've seen that before. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this starter back in. The starter that come out of it was under warranty, so I got one for the other one that wasn't working right. I'll go ahead and take this battery cable nut off of it. And lock washer. I use terminal grease on the spade for the starter circuit. So it shouldn't have a corrosion issue. Put the starter in there. I got the starter up there and just stuck a pry bar under the back of it to hold it in place while I started the 2 bolts. These starter bolts torque down to 50 foot-pounds. Go ahead and recoat your drive shaft flange bolts with blue Loctite and install them. Line up your match mark with the flange mark. And they torque to 80 foot-pounds. Go ahead and tighten your battery cable up to the starter with a 13mm nut and slip your starter wire onto its spaded terminal. I was having trouble with the locking on this one, so I put a small zip strap around the back of the terminal to the battery cable. That'll back it up to make sure it stays on there. You can use a pasty mixture of baking soda and water. Will get most of that right off of there. Or a battery terminal cleaner, which I'm probably going to go get. Clean these up. This is a mixture of 2 tablespoons of baking soda and about a ½ cup of water. Keep this stuff stirred up if you're pouring it out. Once your starter cable is hooked up and the start wire is clipped on, you come up and make sure your battery terminals are corrosion free. I'll put a little grease on them and tighten them down. Make sure they're tight. And you need to put the skid plate on now, or make sure it starts, everything works before you put the skid plate on, which is what I'm going to do. Yep, I'd say it works. Just like downtown. Go ahead and put the skid plate back on. My advice is to leave both of these front skid plate bolts alone if they're just loose, because both of these ones broke off. I might drill a hole in the corner of this frame and put some 1/8 inch coarse threaded tap screws in there to hold that up. That did it. Skid plate looks like it's took a hit or two. Okay, it's ready to go back home.